Say, buddy, you mentioned something about research for a story.
That's right. Got a tip that something big's happening.
In a nowhere little town like that? They sure didn't mention anything about it on TV.
Yeah, well, I'm freelance, pal. I don't make my living waiting for the TV to tell me what to cover.
Here she is. Willamette, Colorado. Population 53,594. Distinguishing characteristics? Jack shit. About the only thing to do in this town is kill time at the shopping mall.
Thus we're introduced to Dead Rising, but more importantly to Willamette, our prototypical suburban middle American wasteland. This bland, mostly featureless town is the canvas upon which all of the game's themes are writ large. And by that I mean that the political themes of Dead Rising are hardly understated. Does that make them less valuable? Well, in my opinion, no. Classic political satires like Dr. Strangelove or The Great Dictator deliver their messages with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, but that makes them no less effective. We're introduced to the game proper for a brilliantly atmospheric sequence that shows off one of the key mechanics, as well as bringing to mind ideas about Guy Debord's Society of the Spectacle, where instead of trying to save your fellow man, you dispassionately use his gruesome demise to capture the most impressive possible images. As we watch, I'll preface this video by saying that Dead Rising is one of my favourite games of all time, which is partly why I'm covering it ahead of many other more obvious choices. The other reason, of course, is its recent re-release on Steam 10 years after the original, which seemed to me to be the perfect time to replay a game that I adored when I was much younger. As such, this video, as I'm sure you've seen, is a long one, as I feel there's a lot of ground to cover in the main story, the side missions, and other more metatextual aspects. But I hope you'll stick with me as I show you the politics of one of the Xbox 360's best games. I should also point out that this review will be full of spoilers, so if you're at all interested in its brand of goofy action survival horror, I'd advise you to play it yourself if you haven't already. Otherwise, we'll continue. To keep things simple, I'm going to be tackling the game in basically chronological order as it's played, otherwise I know I'll get too confused and forget things. This does mean that a lot of the game's cutscenes are going to be front loaded at the start of the video to establish the story, but I promise that I'll catch up on commentary as we go on. Additionally, I want to apologise in advance for the length, but I feel there's a lot of ground to cover. Like practically all great zombie movies, particularly Romero's work, and the bad ones too, our colourful cast of characters is largely made up of broad stereotypes and caricatures, and the first, our main character, is probably the most important.
Hey! Can you get me on the rooftop of that mall?
You gotta be kidding me!
Alright, listen! Don't forget to come back for me!
As long as you're not dead, Fred.
It's Frank. Frank West. Remember that name, because the whole world's gonna know it in 3 days, when I get the scoop.
Alright.
Frank West exemplifies, well, the West, in particular America, as seen through the eyes of Japanese developers Capcom. He's brash, obnoxious, reckless, and ambitious to a fault, and yet somehow comes out of it all as strangely likeable, mirroring Japan's own fascination with the United States. As an avatar for the player who is here to explore, experiment, have fun, and ultimately insert their own will into the game world, he's perfect.
You came alone?
Yeah, I'm freelance. You know, go on the battlefield alone, no crew. So, what's going on around here anyway?
I think you'd better see for yourself. This, my friend, is hell.
Here we also meet Carlito, the mysterious stranger who clearly knows more than he lets on. More on him later, but for now he's just vaguely sinister. Soon we move inside the mall to see the eponymous Rising Dead up close for the first time and meet more idiot caricatures that are only here to ramp up the body count.
Madonna?
Quit screwing around!
Have you seen my baby? I can't live without my precious little sweetie doggy. Oh, where is my Madonna? Where is she?
Hey, this is no time to ogle pretty girls, son. You looking to get yourself eaten alive by zombies?
What? Did you just say zombies?
Take a look out there. If those ain't zombies, what would you call them? Look on the bright side. Zombies are stupid and slow. We should be safe in here. All right.
Whoa, I think the game's contempt for what Marx would have called the idiocy of semi-rural America is showing. From the moronic rich old woman who thinks anybody really cares about her poodle right now, to the fat, inept, middle-aged patriarch who has taken control, it's really putting the boot in. Of course, this is a zombie narrative, so stupid characters are a given.
You! Stop right there! Do you have any idea what you've done? Why did you summon me to this place? What are you planning?
Would you calm down? I don't even know what you're talking about!
Here we also meet an ill-tempered old man, but again, more on him later.
Madonna! My Madonna is out there! Oh,
What are you thinking?
Madonna!
Get off!
Oh, wait, baby! I'm saving you, baby! Wait for me, sweetie! Madonna!
And of course, the fates of everyone in the mall are sealed by the aforementioned human manifestation of empty nest syndrome, who suddenly develops super strength and throws off grown men. But that might just be because they clearly have no will to live. He doesn't even try to get up. Hey, just because I like this game doesn't mean I think it's perfect, but it does capture the sometimes dodgy action of the old zombie flicks nicely.
Everyone, move this way! Quick, to the stairs! Move!
Even though you can pick up your first weapons here and try to save the other survivors as the game proper begins, they just stand there dumbly like cattle until they get eaten, so there's really no point.
Huh?
Where are the others?
I don't know. I hope they got away. No.
As long as those things are in the mall, we'd better not use this door.
Wait a minute. You want to get back in there? What for?
We've now seen all of our core cast and set the scene for the main action, with the non-voiced old security officer Otis giving you advice over walkie-talkie. Yeah, I know, Japanese games, don't ask me to explain that one. More importantly,
I'm Jesse. The man you saw earlier is Brad. That's all I'm authorized to tell you.
Yes, thank you. If you want, you actually can just wait here in the security room for 72 hours until the helicopter comes to pick you up, but if you don't go down into the mall, there isn't much of a game, so you're soon roped into the main plot.
Show up. God, it's you. Look, don't sneak up on me.
Brad was attacked. I located him on the monitor. Ugh!
It's probably just a sprain.
I've gotta help Brad, or he's done for.
All right, fine. Give me your gun. Come on. I'm the reason you just got hurt. Let me help.
No, I can't let a civilian do that. That's against regulations.
Yeah, well, I don't think they had zombie-infested malls in mind when they wrote those regulations, kid.
You know how to use this?
Kinda. I've covered wars, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's quite how embedded reporting works, but we do indeed jump right into shooting zombies and killing people, so what do I know? It's worth keeping in mind that this is 2006, so the war that Frank, a relatively young American, was in was most likely Iraq or Afghanistan, and this is reflected in the themes of the game.
Your, girlfriend sent me to find you.
Who? Jesse? Okay, we'll have to talk about this later. You know how to use that gun?
I've never fired at a person.
Try to get close to the target, okay?
And what am I supposed to do when I get close?
Well, the best solution would be to shoot the guy. But if you can't do that, keep him busy dodging your bullets and stay out of trouble. Are you up to it?
I'm a lot better with a camera. But yeah, I'll give it a shot.
So, after a battle that's way too hard for how early in the game it is, you chase off Carlito and finally start getting some answers. That is, unless you got killed your first time like I did. As you will see, all my other footage of the game has me at level 50, which is just because the audio on my original run got all messed up. The The game isn't really that hard in general, though it does have some frustrating aspects that I wish had been cleaned up for the HD re-release.
Thanks for your help. The name's Brad.
I'm Frank West, photojournalist. And right now, I'd rather have an explanation than your thanks, Brad.
I don't know what Jesse told you, but as far as I'm concerned, we're through working together. So you cover your zombie story and leave the rest to us.
You guys are looking for someone here, aren't you?
Who is that? Where did you take it?
You help me, I help you.
You're one hell of a journalist, aren't you, Frank? A hot-headed, underhanded, hotshot paparazzi with nothing better to do than to invade people's privacy.
I try. You got a point?
Despite all the zombie killing, perhaps the most unrealistic aspect of Frank West is his dogged investigative journalism due to the underfunding of modern corporate newsrooms. Slightly off topic, but if you're interested, I recommend the book Flat Earth News by Nick Davies.
Jesse and I are DHS agents. And yes, we are looking for the man in that picture.
You're with Homeland Security. Is that guy a terrorist or something?
It is notable that Jesse and Brad are from the DHS rather than the FBI or CIA like the typical fictional agent. That is, they are from an agency that was created in response to 9/11, just as the game's narrative also reflects the post-September 11th world paradigm, as we will see.
Hey! So do I have your permission to cover this story? Or not?
So we finally move through the mall to complete the first day's story missions known as cases and get some freedom where I can talk about the game a bit more. Now, the voice acting in this game is generally great in my opinion, but Brad in this scene always cracks me up.
Sir, if you could just kindly come with us, we can wrap this whole thing up.
No, I'm not leaving until you can
Absolutely,
guarantee
sir.
me
If
safe
you
passage
just open
to
this gate. Just open this gate.
No.
It's for your protection. Just
I am not
press.
opening any gate. Thank you very much. I'm going to stay right here.
Dr.
where
Barnaby.
it's safe.
Sir.
Thank you and goodbye.
Dr. Barnaby?
Goodbye.
The old coot's not dumb. He wants us to call for help first. We gotta line out or what?
The signal's being blocked. I can't even contact HQ on the emergency line.
So, if we want to get our hands on Dr. Barnaby, we're gonna have to secure a way out of here ourselves.
There's a helicopter coming. 3 days from now. At noon, it's my ride.
All right then. I'll see to it that the DHS picks up the charter fee. Can we take Dr. Barnaby as well?
Sure. As long as you tell me what's going on.
So here we come to one of the most controversial aspects of the game in terms of mechanics, the 72-hour time limit, or 6 hours in real time plus cutscenes. Some people say that this made the game overly restricted and rushed them, but I feel that it kept the game tight and focused and made a perfect run a real challenge. Even though the time limit is set in stone, little else is. You can play the story halfway through and then stop, ignore it altogether, or show up to the first boss battle only to kill Brad. In the side missions too, you're given almost total freedom, able to escort about 45 other survivors safely to the security room, disregard them as you run around and kill zombies, or take revenge for the game's woeful AI by slaughtering everyone. But of course this is a political analysis, so let's take a look at some of the key themes of the game.
Zombies. I still can't believe all this, you know? Seems so unreal.
Well, of course, it is unreal in the sense that the zombies are essentially a fantastical metaphor, but the zombie narrative has been used to explore weighty issues from practically the very start. The modern zombie movie genre, and modern horror in general, began in 1968 with the release of George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which shocked pearl-clutching moral crusaders with gore and violence that was extreme for the era, but the more enduring aspect is the film's critique of civil rights era America's racial politics, as well as the Vietnam War. It's clearly Romero's 1978 Dawn of the Dead which Dead Rising owes the most to, however, and the movie's producers MKR even filed a civil suit against Capcom alleging that the game was a direct adaptation. They argued that the game's rural, two-story mall setting, journalist protagonist, and critique of consumerism in America in general violated their copyright. US Magistrate Judge Richard Seaborg dismissed the case in 2008, writing that To the extent that Dead Rising may be deemed to possess a theme, it is confined to the killing of zombies in the process of attempting to unlock the cause of the zombie infestation. The social commentary MKR draws from Dawn of the Dead, in other words, appears totally absent from the combat focus found in Dead Rising. In this respect, I wholly disagree, and I can only attribute this opinion to the traditional snobbery about movies versus video games that previous generations held about literature in the theatre versus movies. Maybe I could send in my video. Then again, better not for Capcom's sake. With that said, there is plenty to indulge the player when it comes to combat focus, with 140 improvised and purpose-built weapons from the comedic to the deadly, and with varying degrees of effectiveness. This, in my opinion, is part of the game's broad satire of the consumerist ideal of freedom and the oversaturation of choice. Many of the weapons are essentially useless, like a toy sword or a stuffed bear, but are merely there for the player's amusement. You could take some kind of critique about the psychology of the gamer from this fictional comedic violence, which I personally feel isn't valid, but thankfully the game mostly chooses not to, unlike the movies Gamer and The Condemned, which hypocritically use lurid violence and sexual assault to entertain while attacking the viewer for enjoying it. However, our first optional boss, which the game calls Psychopaths, can be viewed as a subtle criticism of the player, or at least a certain type of player. Like the main story, I'll be tackling these in order, and you meet fellow photographer Kent soon after the completion of the first day's missions. Unlike the other optional psychopaths, you must meet Kent multiple times and complete his tasks in order to access his actual boss fight. In a sense, he serves as an extension of the photography tutorial in the opening helicopter ride, and as a character he brings to mind some of the same questions about the line between journalism and voyeurism.
Okay, here comes the next one, Frankie. But first, feast your eyes on my work. Now this is my most emotionally moving shot. Now this is my sexiest shot. Okay. This is my most violent shot. Check it out.
Clearly, Kent is more on the side of voyeurism and self-gratification, but it is worth noting that as the game suggests, he and the player are cut from the same cloth. Much in the same way as GTA 5's Trevor Phillips, he represents the darker impulses of the player. The photo op mechanic that he introduces rewards you in experience points for taking photos at risk to yourself and others, like giving a gun to a suicidal man, snapping a shot of a survivor hanging precariously above a horde of zombies, or a man with his crotch on fire, and Kent's storyline requires you to snap a high-scoring erotica photo, most likely by taking a creep shot of Jessie or another female survivor, or even a zombie, God forbid. By passing this challenge, you enrage Kent further and reveal his true intentions, with two alternate endings depending on what time you arrive at your final meeting.
Ah, Frankie, good timing. I was just about to shoot my piece de resistance. I'm gonna capture on film the exact moment that a human being crosses into zombiehood. What are you doing? My shot! You ruined my perfect shot! Listen, Mr. West, I owe you an apology. It looks like you're a pro after all, you know? If I would have known that, I'd have taken pictures like this from the start. Ha! How you like them apples, huh? You see, I think outside the box. And the best part is, I'm just getting started. Famous photographer Frank West. Killed in the line of duty like a true hero. This'll be the greatest picture of my career. Maybe in the history of photography. This is gonna take me straight to the top. Yeah.
While the canonical Frank West is horrified at Kent's plan and fights to save either Tad or himself, gameplay Frank's actions might leave the introspective player feeling rather hypocritical, and the game itself relishes in an array of grisly zombification sequences during the deaths of optional survivors to reward the gorehounds in the audience. Essentially, Kent is a younger, hungrier version of Frank that is probably closer in age to the average player, and it could also be read as a warning about the desensitized kids these days, constantly hunting for more potent highs in their lives and their entertainment. Then again, people have been saying that about the younger generations for centuries.
Do it, Frank. Take my picture. It'll look great on your mantle.
In the evening, the convicts appear in the park.
Loser! Get your aim right, brother!
All right, looks like we found our next contestant.
We're gonna take out that dude and snatch his old lady.
They too can be seen as a representation of the pleasure-seeking impulse of an antisocial player, but this is hardly implicit, and they're basically here to make up the numbers. Their Humvee speed makes them a threat to any survivors out in the open, but their dismal AI makes for an easy battle once they get stuck. If you've been finishing the cases and trying to save every single survivor, the pace has been a bit hectic until now, but you finally have a little time to kill by this point. Much like the montages in Dawn of the Dead, you'll probably spend some time enjoying the mall's consumer delights. Bowl, try out some new bludgeons, or just play golf. I find the often frantic pace makes these slices of retail heaven all the sweeter. After that much needed Frank time, it's on to Adam the Clown.
Stay away from there, Gramps! Everyone used to laugh at me. I was a walking punchline. But not When the zombies came, everyone died. That's why I decided to give all the happy people a lift on this fun ride. I won't let you stop the ride, Gramps. If the ride stops, then the zombies come back. And that won't be any fun at all.
Clearly, he represents a Derridian deconstruction of, nah, just kidding, even I can't spin politics from everything. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and sometimes a homicidal clown is just a horror cliche, albeit a fun one. While all of these psychopaths are equally optional, Adam's grisly demise gives you both of the best rewards. A respawning, horribly overpowered mini chainsaw that essentially breaks the game if you can't resist the temptation to use it for everything, and a shortcut through the mall which helps to meet the deadlines. Also in the area are a pair of cheesy Japanese tourists who inexplicably decided to vacation in Nowhere, Colorado. Ah well, Capcom has to throw a bone to the hometown audience somehow, even if no one in Japan actually owned an Xbox 360. As night draws on, the zombies become more aggressive and the lights go out. Suddenly the atmosphere is a lot less playful, and with the side missions over for now, unfortunately there's a fair bit of time to go until anything happens. It is great to see how the mood really changes at night, but tonight there's barely anything to do. Jesse even advises you to stay in the security room, but with no ability to time skip, you'll just be standing there for upwards of half an hour. This is one of the game's big flaws in my opinion, so we'll move ahead to sunrise.
That can't be good. What's going on anyway?
Before this whole thing started, someone called the professor and told him to come to this mall.
Jack the line, did you? So was this the caller, this guy here? They've got something to do with the zombies, don't they?
They're the reason we came here. And if he gets away with Dr. Barnaby, none of our questions will be answered. Don't be daydreaming out here.
Bacha, mama.
Hey, it's the professor.
Look out! If we don't do something, the professor's gonna end up zombie chow.
Another fight with Carlito, and this time he has an even bigger gun. Even so, it's not that tough to kill him from range or up close if you have a good inventory prepared. We've fought him twice and still know little about him, but that will change tomorrow.
I'll be fine. Just take care of the professor. Go!
Brad! Oh my god! I managed to stop the bleeding, but he's running a fever. He needs medicine.
Yep, it's a fetch quest, but one that's more than meets the eye as you head to the supermarket. Here we meet perhaps the game's most memorable psychopath, a vicious skewering of the petty bourgeois small businessman.
Came to vandalize my store! Huh? Not on my watch!
Someone's been hurt. I need medicine.
Hurt? That's just what this bitch said when she came to vandalize my store! I don't take kindly to vandalism. I won't allow it! Listen to me, and listen good, partner. I don't allow vandalism in my store!
Wow. Now, in Marxist theory, the petty bourgeois is generally considered to be the middle-class small shopkeeper or tradesman that either works with his employees in his own business or is himself a managerial employee. Proud to be above the ultimate exploitation of the working classes, he is nonetheless resentful about his position below the true bourgeoisie and anxious about his uncertain place in an increasingly stratified society. Traditionally, these factors have led to a patriarchal, parochial, conservative outlook which manifests itself in an obsession with power, security, and the maintenance of his small privileges and status. In times of crisis, the petty bourgeois is often a hotbed of reactionary thought, from the rise of Nazism to, perhaps, our own crisis in Willamette. After all, it doesn't get much more middle American reactionary than patrolling the aisles with a weaponized shopping cart. Stephen has clearly been driven mad by the dissolution of his normal order and must take matters into his own hands if he is to retain the respect he feels he deserves and protect his store. It's worth noting that the supermarket's name is Sean's Food and Stuff, not Stephen's, suggesting that he may not even be the business's owner. Nonetheless, his identity is so entwined with his class that he lays down his life to protect his master's property. Perhaps the most striking point is that Stephen's main concern is not even the zombies, but the criminals that might use this turmoil to usurp his petty position of authority. As he never mentions them, it's uncertain if he even understands that there are any zombies. In the words of Søren Kierkegaard, the petty bourgeois is spiritless, devoid of imagination. He lives within a certain orbit of trivial experiences as to how things come about, what is possible, what usually happens. That is to say that the exaggerated caricature of Stephen may be unable to conceive of the existence of a situation so far outside his norm and is simply viewing the undead outbreak through the prism of his normal fears about the unruly lower classes. Or maybe I'm massively overreaching, but it's fun to think about, right? Worst case scenario, I can always argue the death of the author and say that's what the word signifies to me. I somehow doubt that Stephen was written with Marxist theory in mind, but I can believe that he's inspired by caricatures of the behaviour of the capitalist figure of petty middle management authority.
Who will run my store when I'm gone? My store. My food. My sales. My customers. Have a nice day. Clean up! Register 6!
Back in the land of the living? You're one tough cookie. Can you stand? Look, I saw you at the entrance yesterday. You needed medicine too. Maybe we should work together.
I don't need any help. You people don't know a thing. You're the ones who caused this nightmare. You ruined Santa Cabeza and started all this.
I wonder who she needed medicine for. Frank sure is a great investigator. But don't worry, we'll find out more about Santa Cabeza soon. This was originally the end of the first part, but since you're watching the unabridged version, you'll be getting my magnum opus as it was intended. I remastered some of the dialogue and added a few sentences, and I'll be correcting some mistakes, but you won't be missing out on anything except the outro at the end of each part. However, this does mean that there are some gaps to fill, and due to the way it was edited, it would be too time consuming to remove those portions of video, so I'll add anything I forgot to mention into these segments. With Brad still at death's door, we need to go deliver the medicine before we do anything else, but there's no reason why we can't use Stephen's murder cart to get back to the security room. No cutscene for once, but we have to be back here soon for the next case. However, we have enough time to double back to North Plaza to deal with a big dude carrying a machete in the hardware store that attentive viewers might remember from a call during the Stephen battle. Not that it was scripted to appear then, but it's just typical of Otis's usual timing. Anyway.
Name and rank, soldier!
You can't tell me, can you, fella? Oh yeah, I know why. It's because you're Viet Cong. I'm right, aren't I? You are nothing but a filthy communist! You, son, are gonna tell me where the gorilla's hideout is. By the time I'm done beating information out of you, you are gonna be begging for death to come take you away.
As a filthy communist, perhaps this should be the slang I enjoy the most, but when I think about it, it really just makes me a little sad. As leftists, we often focus on the foreign victims of American imperialism, and rightly so, but even as we criticise the bombing runs and regime changes, and see Cliff's grisly display which brings to mind the atrocities of the Contras, we should never forget that the soldier is also a victim of empire. Even if he doesn't lose his life in a military that prioritises trillion-dollar jets over troop transports that aren't wiped out by a single roadside IED, he may well lose his mind, or at least a part of his mental stability. Certainly, he will lose his innocence while in his teens and in many ways still a boy. In the 21st century, young men and women are led into killing people they do not know for reasons they don't really understand, by economic need, misguided patriotism, family pride, predatory military recruiters in their schools, but most of all by the cold-hearted logic of the military-industrial complex. In Vietnam, of course, the draft lottery meant the only young men safe were those wealthy enough to go to college, then quickly find a wife to get pregnant, like Dick Cheney and Newt Gingrich, or the sons of old men with connections, like Donald Trump, who played football, tennis and golf at university before being granted a medical exception for bone spurs after graduation, which later disappeared without surgery, Bill Clinton, who arranged to join the officer corps to avoid being cannon fodder before backing out once his lottery number made him safe, and George W. Bush, who secured a coveted place in the Texas National Guard, which then tolerated him failing to appear for duty for months at a time, which may have had something to do with his father being a Texas congressman. All of whom, of course, would eventually send more working class boys to die and to kill in rich old men's wars. Christian G. Appy's Working Class War states that 80% of the 2.5 million enlisted men and 58,315 men killed were from working class families. Of course, even the survivors of war can continue to be affected by PTSD off the battlefield. Indeed, the troubled Vietnam veteran has become such a long-standing theme that Cliff is rather passé in some ways, although the anti-American themes of this work make his portrayal somewhat more nuanced. Though his fate is not of his own making, and he is ultimately treated sympathetically, Cliff is mislabeled as a psychopath by the game in the same way as the other boss is. The rough treatment of the mentally ill as deranged murderers by the game perhaps reflects the wider attitude in American society, where cuts to funding in the Reagan era often put unstable people back on the streets. Of course, the cast in general is stereotyped, and ultimately it has to be up to the viewer to decide what they're offended by and what they feel is just a typical writing cliché. In my opinion, the game serves more as an examination of how the mindsets of certain subgroups in society can be exaggerated and twisted by crisis into darker versions of themselves than any real analysis of mental illness one way or another, and this is a kind of satire that I appreciate.
Here. Take this. My granddaughter. She was done in by those damn zombies. When I heard her scream, I just lost it. Everything went white suddenly. The war, it wasn't over. Not for me. It never ended.
Cliff's key gets you into the storage room where you rescue his terrified prisoners and head back to the security room for the next case. With Nam in mind, let's dig into the unlockable outfits and go Rambo for a while.
He's stabilized. You should be fine for now. Are you alright? You have blood on you.
Huh? Oh. Yeah. Must be from that girl I saved.
Girl? Was she hurt?
I offered to help her, but she took off. She was saying something about Santa Cabeza.
Santa Cabeza? I think I... Oh! Dr. Barnaby, you're awake.
Santa Cabeza. I should have known. I thought Santa Cabeza was over and done with. You plan to dispense justice now?
Calm down, Dr. Barnaby. We're only following orders. We have to protect you.
Protect? More like imprison!
Professor, if we're going to protect you, we need to know the truth. All of it. Please. Talk to us.
Fine. I'll just get my information somewhere else. Thank you very much. Maybe if I can track down that woman again.
Of course the US government is here to protect someone who's clearly evil instead of the general public, but I guess that's what Frank is here for. The next case doesn't start for some time, so we can get to saving some survivors, from the self-absorbed materialistic skank to the typically Japanese caricature of the typically American morbidly obese guy. There are actually two characters with more meat on their bones than Ronald in the game, but of course they're both psychopaths, while Ronald is just an idiot who refuses to avoid being eaten by zombies unless you sate his hunger first. Soon we meet Sean and the True Eye cult.
The end of the world is upon us. Death itself has overflowed upon the world, defiling us all. The only path to the salvation of the soul is the purging of the tainted blood!
They could be seen as a criticism of fanatical American Christianity, but since he doesn't mention Jesus or the Bible, it seems just as likely that he's a send-up of Japan's own Aum Shinrikyo, which killed 20 people between 1994 and 1995, especially given the game's focus on terrorism. As an aside, to reference back to the analysis of Kent, Frank wasn't even planning to save the girl until Sean saw him just take pictures. What a bastard.
A non-believer in our midst. If we are to achieve salvation, his blood must flow! He must be purged! Spill his blood! The blood of the heretic!
Overall, Sean's just a cartoonishly evil stock villain that introduces some human antagonists to the game, albeit ones that are hardly any smarter than the zombies. Then again, maybe that's an irony in itself. Or Dead Rising could just have awful AI, you decide. He's hardly unrealistic, however, as even without zombies as proof of the apocalypse, thousands of leaders have used the spiritual emptiness of late capitalism to incite their followers to do insane things in the name of some kind of purpose in life, which perhaps explains why there are far more faceless cultists in the game than survivors. Since Sean mysteriously disappears after the cutscene, we'll move on for now to another figure that demands blind obedience.
What have we here? Looks like you lured another man in here, you little whore.
No, I didn't. Please, help me.
Let's see just how shameless you are, you dirty little skank. Say hello to my little friend.
No, not again. Help me!
Officer. Officer, can I talk to you for a minute? I mean, look, what did that woman do? This seems a little,
Shut your pie hole! If you try to interfere with official police business, start with you before I get to her!
I'd say the themes here are pretty obvious, but there's a lot to love in Joe's portrayal of the fat, control-crazed, small-town cop. Even though Frank has a half-dozen psychopath kills at this point, he still seems a little unsure about treading on her clearly deranged toes, which perhaps shows just how deep the culturally programmed deference reaction to the police goes in American society. Joe would hardly be the first lunatic to live out their power fantasies, sexual or otherwise, while hiding behind a badge and a gun. The end of civilization in Willamette removes the need for the usual facade, and she degenerates into complete madness. Joe is, I think, our only homosexual character, although it's also possible she's simply punishing her captives because of some other Freudian complex. Either way, she's portrayed little differently than a man would be in this role, which I suppose is some kind of equality. Perhaps a feminist critique would be that to survive in the hyper-masculine small-town police environment, she has subsumed the attributes of some of her male law enforcement co-workers, including their most depraved impulses towards the domination of women.
I'm gonna die. Can't believe a worthless prick like you did me in.
Yet more survivors to save. Wait, how did they even get up there? Our next psychopath could be tackled any time in the first 2 days, but in my mind is most appropriate now, since he symbolises the other side of the pathological coin when it comes to America's forceful ideas about civil protection.
Look, mister, if we're gonna fight these zombies, we need guns!
Stay back! I trust them damn zombies about as far as I can throw them, but I trust people even less.
Don't shoot! Look, let's talk this over.
You can talk to my 12 gauge! Don't get no closer! I'll blow y'all to kingdom come!
Hey, hang on.
Oh, God damn it, I warned you. In a situation like this, I can't afford to trust nobody!
Cletus, because of course his name is Cletus, represents many of the same themes that Steven did, but is more of a cliche of the gun-toting redneck small businessman. A more explicitly political portrayal, it's easy to imagine the fat, insecure, reactionary survivalist glued to his TV watching Fox News. In this case, what I speculated about Steven is stated explicitly, that Cletus is more scared of the humans than the zombies. Much like Steven, Cletus is enraged by the thought of encroachment on his private property, or, like most baby boomers, being asked to give up some of what he feels belongs to him just to alleviate the life or death needs of others. It's interesting to note that under Colorado law, Cletus's actions may not even be illegal. You've probably heard of the Castle Doctrine, a set of laws covering about half the states in the Union, which apply standards for lethal self-defense at an absurdly low level, and Colorado has its own variant. A common liberal attack on gun rights is that, far from self-defense, gun nuts stockpile weapons out of some paranoid far-right macho Sylvester Stallone impulse towards cleaning up the streets by gunning down crime, perhaps with a racial component. Certainly, a male Republican is 6 times more likely to own a gun than a female Democrat, but is it really fair to psychoanalyze people this way? Well, you tell me. In 1985, the Colorado bill was dying in the legislature when one jokester quoted, "Go ahead punk, make my day." This particular line is taken from 1983's crypto-fascist flick Sudden Impact, where Clint Eastwood's renegade cop Dirty Harry foils a ludicrously over-the-top robbery of a small diner by shooting 3 black men. The media loved the title, and lawmakers supporting the Make My Day Act showed off their juvenile machismo. "Sometimes blowing dirtballs away is the reasonable thing to do," one stated. The next joked that they should set an annual hunter's bag limit of 10 intruders. Clearly, it doesn't take much prodding for the inner psychosis of many Second Amendment advocates to be revealed and to see the meagre value placed on human life, especially of the poor, as opposed to material possessions by the middle-class crusaders for property rights. The game takes a quick break now from commenting on gun culture to resume shortly, and so will we. Cletus is one of the harder bosses, and shooting him doesn't do much damage, so the best way to finish him off is with lots of healing items or a strong bladed weapon. Or, if you're feeling cheap, you can use the machine gun from the convict's Humvee.
Damn, mister! Come on now! What are you, crazy? You want guns so bad that y'all are willing to kill for them? Let me go!
Hey!
Please!
Hey, wait!
No! No!
Cletus's ironic statement sort of rings true since the player doesn't actually save any survivors here, but you do get access to the game's only spawn point for shotguns and sniper rifles, which will be a great help for the next battle.
Hey,
Seems like she doesn't want to talk to Frank much, but since this is a video game, shooting her with a shotgun will help change her mind. Since she has more than 2 cutscenes to get her point across, Isabella's themes are spread a bit more throughout the game, and I'll let them develop a bit more before I comment much on them. Suffice to say, this battle can be challenging without getting your hands on Cletus's weapons first, but the courageous can choose to go in hard with a powerful melee weapon instead. Thankfully, she seems no worse for wear after being brutalized.
wait! I've got to talk to you! You listen to me? I'm not here to hurt you! I just want to talk. Now, what do you know about all this anyway?
Are you a reporter? How much do you already know? Have you called for help?
Hold your horses, babe. I'm the one asking the questions here. What is Santa Cabeza, and how is it connected to all this?
The zombies were created by you, not us. That's what Carlito wants you all to know.
Who?
If you want to interview someone, talk to Carlito. He has all the answers.
You're talking about that guy that took pot shots at us with a sniper rifle, aren't you? Take me to him.
No. Not now. He's injured. And in no mood to talk to anyone. I'll bring him to you once he's recovered. I can persuade him. I'm his little sister, after all.
Why should I trust you to bring him to me?
The zombies are a message from Carlito. He wanted people to know.
Fine. Go. When will you be back?
Tonight at midnight. I'm Isabella, by the way. And I promise, I'll come back.
We're finally getting closer to the truth behind the outbreak, which is cool and all, but the real reward for this battle is Isabella's Americana-style bike, flame decals and all, which he just leaves behind. It seems like a slightly ironic choice, but hey, I guess there's no ethical consumption under capitalism anyway, and you could equally argue that wearing jeans makes you a slave to American consumer culture. Speaking of which, I decided to channel Ronald McDonald in my next outfit, and while we wait for Carlito, I went to take care of another allegory for gun culture.
Looks like 72 yards. I can blow his head off clean from here. Can I take a shot, Dad?
Getting a headshot from here's no big deal, Jack. Think you can pull it off, Thomas?
But Daddy, he ain't no zombie. He's just a man.
Thomas! We're doing this to survive. You know that.
Using a firearm for self-defense is our God-given right as Americans, Thomas.
Come on, Thomas, shoot. Shoot him.
Shoot him, Thomas!
Said shoot him. Thomas. Now! What are you waiting for? Do it!
To be honest, I think this is mostly a retread of Cletus's encounter as far as the meaning goes, but it doesn't hurt to drive the point home about America's Second Amendment culture. Here again we see right-wing might makes right survivalists, this time crossed with game hunters complete with fluorescent vests. It's a dark satire on the kind of gun owner who buys a rifle hoping and not fearing that he will have a chance to use it. The game itself sort of neglects them with no boss music or final cutscene, leading to a somewhat eerily quiet battle set to the upbeat Mall soundtrack. It's certainly no battle with the end, but it's fun to give them a taste of their own medicine against prey that can fight back for once. Their depiction does bring back to mind the Colorado lawmakers' comments earlier about a bag limit on intruders, and they certainly spout the same rhetoric about a right to self-defense as real-life gun rights defenders. Certainly the Make My Day Act doesn't apply to this situation, but as we've a little time to kill, I'd like to look a little more at why I feel it could have applied to Cletus, even though the game itself takes a clear moral position that he's a crazed murderer. It may seem that Cletus is not really in a situation that requires self-defense, but it's actually up to the prosecution to prove that the killer did not fear for their safety. Cletus issued a warning before firing, which is not even required by the law, and it's true that the man he killed was saying he wanted Cletus's guns, which could lead Cletus to believe he was going to commit a crime while trespassing on his property, which serves as justification under the act. Of course, the man was unarmed, but Colorado courts have ruled that an empty hand can be seen as a weapon which justifies lethal self-defense. I'm going off on a tangent somewhat, I know, but I wanted to demonstrate how American gun culture affects lawmaking in practice. This example is of course fictional, but real-life examples in Colorado alone where the shooter was not charged include in 2010 where a man was shot in the face while stealing a trailer from a front yard, in 2012 when a drunken woman was shot and wounded after walking through an unlocked door into the wrong house and then faced trespassing charges, and in 2016 when a 17-year-old boy was shot in the back and killed while leaving a backyard after stealing marijuana from a garage. 33 other states have a stand your ground law, which means lethal force can be used essentially with impunity in public places as well as in the home, such as in the George Zimmerman case. The point I'm trying to make here is that whether you agree with gun control or not, America clearly has a problem with gun violence, legal and illegal, and a twisted understanding of the value of private property. Most of the time, of course, the shooters in these cases are relatively well off and the victims destitute or mentally ill. In many cases, the slain were indeed criminals, which should be dealt with, but I don't believe that individuals should have the right to inflict the death penalty for relatively minor crimes. If you're wondering where I stand on gun control, I think that every leftist should arm themselves where the law allows it, much as the Black Panthers did. Indeed, it would probably be sensible in the long run for the ruling classes to establish gun control in America, just as groups like the NRA had a remarkable change of heart once black people began to exercise their rights. But just because I understand why some call for armed resistance doesn't mean that I think most of the liberal arguments for gun control are wrong. After all, most people who claim to be valiant defenders of freedom only use their Second Amendment right for the protection of their own petty property interests, or to kill animals. There's some interesting dialogue here with Floyd about the commercialization of culture, but I think it basically speaks for itself. There are 4 survivors in the entrance plaza that you can rescue and escort once you defeat the Hall family, and going back to the security room between talking to Isabella and the next case gives you an optional cutscene that I definitely think is worth seeing.
You learn anything new on this end?
Santa Cabeza is a stronghold of the Central American drug trade.
The professor here seems to think that the zombies are a byproduct of these drugs.
So you're telling me, what, that somebody spread a bunch of zombie drugs around Willamette? For what? What would making the dead come to life accomplish?
They're terrorists. Don't try to explain their actions with logic. I've analyzed the drug in question, and I've reported my findings to the government. That must be what set them off. They didn't want to be exposed. I've told you everything I know. Now get me out of here! Call for help and kill those creeps!
Well, it's nice to know Dr. Barnaby's side of the story, and there's some illuminating remarks here. Linking the Central American antagonist with the drug trade is a pretty typical move, and I suppose you could see the zombies as a metaphor for mindless junkies stumbling around looking for their next fix, but something doesn't seem right about that explanation. Most interesting is the Doctor's comment about the futility of trying to explain the actions of terrorists with logic. As I've said, this game is a product of the post-9/11 world paradigm, and it certainly shows here. His argument echoes the Bush administration ideology that the terrorists hate us for our freedom and nothing else, and he similarly advocates the eradication of terrorism through force. In reality, the neoconservative point of view is still largely unchallenged in mainstream thought, and the real reasons behind Islamic terrorism are obscured. It's a shame that few real journalists have Frank's courage to talk to the other side and to question the story they're given by the American establishment. After dealing with Ronald's idiotic mutiny, it's about midnight and time to head to our meeting.
Were you bitten?
No, it was Carlito. I tried to talk him into coming, but it was no good. He doesn't trust anyone.
He shot you?
He didn't mean to. He was upset.
Oh, well, I suppose that's understandable. We all lose our tempers sometimes.
I don't know what he'll do next.
Getting Isabella through a dark mall packed with nighttime zombies might seem challenging, but since zombies mostly ignore you while you're carrying a survivor for balance, it's actually a lot harder to keep optional survivor Kindle alive on the way back. Carlito's apology here is pretty hilarious too.
I'm so sorry. I never meant to shoot you. Now I've gone and hurt you. Please, forgive me. Please come back to me. I know you can hear me, Isabella. I'm sorry you had to get wrapped up in all this. But you know I'm right. Come back to me, Isabella. There are still things you need to do. I can't do this without you. Please.
I never meant to shoot you. Now I've gone and hurt you. I wonder if he really thought that was gonna work.
Who is that? Is she hurt?
Yeah. You're looking at the bad guy's sister.
Bad guy? The one who caused all this?
That's right. Her asshole brother caused the zombie outbreak.
His sister? What in the hell is going on here? I mean, does this have anything to do with that announcement earlier?
I don't know much more than you at this point, okay? But he shot her, I can tell you that. And just so you know, that would be the same guy that shot you.
What's he after? What's his ultimate goal?
I don't know. But according to her, his plan isn't over. Not yet.
Fine. Consider her in DHS custody. We'll question her when she wakes up.
I actually kinda like Brad, but trust him to act like he's in charge when he contributed nothing to saving Isabella. When she wakes up, we'll finally get the truth about the zombies and see a big part of the game's moral message. You might want to get a drink or something because it's 6 minutes long, but as in practically all monster movie narratives, the origin story is a critical scene that tells us what political message the writers were trying to convey, be it a warning about pollution, nuclear weapons, genetic engineering, bio-warfare, corporate greed, or just the sins of mankind in general through something mystical.
What is your name?
Isabella. Isabella Keys.
Well, Isabella, this is an emergency, so we'll skip the formalities and cut to the chase. Consider this an official interrogation. Tell me everything that you know.
Fine. I'll explain why all of this is your fault. There was no drug trade in Santa Cabeza. Just an American research facility. They were doing research on some sort of parasitic insect. Like a wasp. A wasp that turns living things into zombies. If you don't believe me, just ask the man who was in charge of that research. The head of the Santa Cabeza Livestock Research Facility, Dr. Barnaby.
Jesse!
It started! He's turning!
Hey! Oh, no, you don't!
I'm a zombie.
Tell me the truth, Doc. Were you conducting experiments with zombies?
Zombies? Yes. We were conducting experiments to reduce the cost of breeding. We accidentally made zombie livestock.
So the government's now in the zombie-making business. The whole story about the drug trade was a cover-up?
What do you know? We were trying to mass produce cattle. Do you have any idea how much meat Americans consume in a single day? That research was absolutely necessary! I haven't done anything
One day, in my village, the people turned into zombies. Those damn wasps. They escaped from the lab. It wasn't long before they got to work. The zombies spread. The army was called in. They killed everyone.
Move. So, the terrorism is a retaliation for a cruel government cover-up. Sounds plausible. Or it could be some serious bullshit. In either case, we have to get out of here alive if we want to find out for sure.
We have to check if she's been bitten. Let me take a look. I'm a medical technician. I could be useful if you let me do my job. I know I have no right to ask, but please, let me help. If you don't get out of here, the truth dies with you.
If allowing you to atone for you and your brother's scheme makes things go more smoothly for us, I'm all for it.
This is the game's longest cutscene by far, and there's a lot of meat here, get it? So I'll get right into it. This sequence was packed with political meanings, despite the fantastic premise. The idea of zombie wasps is of course pure fiction, but as before in the game, the connections to reality are stronger than you might think. In fact, the concept of a horrific pandemic coming from the demands of cattle farming is actually far from outlandish, thanks to the idiotic short-term logic of the free market. Capitalism often operates on the logic of social Darwinism, so it's only appropriate that the unnatural selection of factory farming might create the bacteria to destroy it. Throughout history, infectious diseases have been the primary killers of human beings, with the 1918 Spanish flu killing 50 to 100 million worldwide, more than the First World War. Alongside vaccination, the discovery and use of penicillin, in government-funded labs, just for the sake of debunking the argument about the innovations of capitalism, was a game-changer which alleviated incalculable suffering. As new antibiotics were discovered, humans remained one step ahead of the evolution of bacterial disease, but they've become harder and harder to develop. In the past decades, we've seen the advent of antibiotic-resistant so-called superbugs, like MRSA, which kill indiscriminately in hospitals. It's inevitable that bacteria, which can reproduce on average every 30 minutes, will eventually mutate and develop new resistances, but the current overuse of these precious drugs accelerates the process dramatically. In an increasingly demanding and insecure economy, getting sick and losing shifts is considered unacceptable, and it's estimated that 47 million unnecessary prescriptions for antibiotics are written each year in the US alone, and 10 million in the UK. These figures are shocking, but to return to the point, they only represent the tip of the iceberg. In 2011, 13,500 tons of antibiotics were used in the US for meat and poultry production, nearly 4 times the amount used for medicine. The vast majority of these are fed as standard practice to cows, pigs, chickens and sheep, who are not symptomatic, and it represents an enormous expense, so why is this done? Well, it's the simple truth that this is the only way for modern factory farms, whose full cruelty I cannot describe here, to operate. Animals kept nose to nose, standing indoors in one spot in their own excrement for their entire lives, in the same gargantuan prisons as up to 60,000 others, and fed in the cheapest ways possible, are of course susceptible to disease, and death before the slaughterhouse, or reduced mass due to stunted growth, is unprofitable. And so, it's for the cause of misery and not mercy that medical antibiotics are being misused, and these farms are tailor-made for the production of drug-resistant bacteria as well as meat. Studies have proven that drug-resistant bacteria is transmitted outside these farms to soil, water and human beings. MRSA is relatively uninfectious and usually preys only on those with compromised immune systems, but why is it that we accept the risk that a drug-resistant form of the Black Death or cholera that could kill millions will develop in these hellish disease incubators purely for the cause of cheap meat? And it's not only bacteria. During the bird flu pandemic in 2009, farms in China routinely used Tamiflu, an antiviral drug intended for humans, on their chickens, which meant that the only known treatment for the highly infectious flu would have been useless if the disease had ever spread to humans. Dr. Barnaby's justifications are not entirely without merit, however. While it may be agribusiness giants that profit from factory farming, it's ordinary people that enable it. In case you were wondering how much meat Americans consume in a single day, it's 65,000 tons, or £52.2 billion annually. This is comparable to a figure in 1909 of just £9.8 billion. Both factory farming and government subsidies are used to keep meat affordable, despite its appalling toll on both human health and the environment. 18% of global greenhouse emissions are caused by livestock farming, and 56 billion farm animals are slaughtered each year. In Brazil, 65% of Amazon deforestation is attributed to cattle ranching. To save money, the trees are not even logged, simply burned. Much like firearms, meat is supposedly ingrained in American culture, and also like firearms, industry lobbyists are hard at work to manipulate both government and the public. How much meat consumption is due to personal desires, and how much is due to industry and environmental pressures? I suppose it's impossible to separate the two, but it's clear that hard choices are in our future as a species. Much like Dr. Barnaby, it's clear that few of us feel that we're doing anything wrong. In the food chain, as in capitalism, the strong do unto the weak, without much thought for those below. Far away from the CEOs and shareholders who profit, American factory farms are usually located in the poorest communities of the poorest states like North Carolina and Mississippi, and the workers must also tolerate terrible and unsafe conditions. It's estimated that 38% of them are undocumented immigrants, mostly from Mexico. It even seems that brutality can radiate throughout society. One study concluded that counties with slaughterhouses have 4 times the national average of violent arrest, and significantly higher rates of alcoholism, domestic abuse, child abuse and suicide. Of course, workers outside the West must face even greater exploitation, and it's no surprise that the Santa Cabeza research facility was located by the writers in Latin America instead of in the US. The scenario Isabella recounts encompasses the real-world suffering inflicted on the Third World, both economically and militarily. While I can't point to any zombie containment black ops, Central and South America have been victimized by American capitalism for centuries. Like in 1928, when between 800 and 2,000 striking United Fruit Company labourers were killed by the Colombian army, after the United States branded them communists and threatened to invade to deal with the threat. It was impossible to accurately quantify what became known as the Banana Massacre because the army threw the bodies into the sea. The United Fruit Company later became Chiquita, now the largest banana distributor in the US. As late as 2004, the company paid millions of dollars for security to the AUC, a far-right Colombian death squad which murdered hundreds of left-wing labourers, politicians, and union leaders with alleged links to leftist guerrillas FARC, with the tacit approval of many local security services. Colombia's Attorney General even accused Chiquita of using their boats to smuggle 3,400 AK-47 rifles and 4 million rounds of ammunition, but no company directors were ever extradited from the US to face trial at Chiquita or any of the other plantation and cattle ranching corporations which hired the AUC. With this litany of crimes from just one company in just one country, perhaps the only unbelievable aspect of the game's explanation is the idea that the bourgeois capitalists who preside over these crimes ever face punishment like Dr. Barnaby did, or that American intelligence agents like Brad would ever be interested in bringing these scandals to light rather than in covering them up. Apologies for the rant, but since this is the game's central cutscene, I thought it was important to be thorough. We have to be back soon, but this is a good time to finally deal with Sean, and until you do, his cultists will be able to stun and then abduct you before taking all your items and your clothes. Ew.
Those who reject salvation embrace ignorance. Now I shall return your tainted blood to the foul earth that has spawned you.
I don't really have much to add here to what I said in the previous video, but without going back to replenish all the overpowered weapons I've collected over the course of the game, it's harder than previous battles. After this, we won't have to worry about the cultists anymore, and the cult has 5 survivors to rescue. Sean serves his purpose as a stock religious villain well enough, but of course the only person with a British accent in this game is evil, typical typecasting. As with most of the game's psychopaths, he has an ironic death. It's easy to miss Cheryl, who's tied up in the side room instead of in the main arena, and I get the feeling she was going to be some sort of nubile female sacrifice, which is sort of appropriate since if you save her she poses for you later on and asks you to take erotica photos of her. It seems a little forced in the middle of a zombie outbreak, but at least it's nice to get some consensual TNA in the game for once. We need some more clothes anyway, so I thought it was appropriate to dress like a stereotypical Chad to confront our last optional psychopath, Paul, who might cut a little close to home for some viewers.
Please stop! What have we ever done?
You do it all the time! You look at me and laugh! Who's there? Stay back! Stay back! Get in closer and I'll light this place up! I suppose you came here to laugh at me too!
Now, we don't have a lot of information about Paul, so a lot has to be inferred from context, but it seems clear to me that he's a take on the socially awkward young male who we've heard a lot about from all sides. Even though this game is a decade old, it's easy to slot the portrayal into current trends. Ultimately, it has to be up to the player whether they see Paul as a troubled teen in need of help who probably hasn't been treated very well by society, or an exaggerated representation of the cliché of neckbeard R9K toxic masculinity in the Elliot Rodgers vein. Even as he's attacking you with explosives, he's treated as a somewhat pathetic figure, with the game giving you comedy points for taking a photo of his awkward running. I think that he does epitomise a strange trend in society for even the supposedly progressive to treat lost, unhappy young men without purpose or self-esteem as losers and jokes, at the same time as lamenting the troubles of other disadvantaged groups in society. As Kent is the strawman representation of Frank West, perhaps Paul is the strawman representation of the player himself. At least that's what I'm forced to imagine from various commentaries on the subject of gamers and social justice. I'll give this portrayal a pass as a work of satire, but I can't quite stomach that excuse for various hysterical news articles or the infamous Gamer ISIS NCIS episode. Of course, we must address the fact that gaming and reactionary ideology have become intertwined in some ways, but we shouldn't forget that it was not only the alt-right or MRAs, but also the feminist and social justice community who were responsible for redefining Gamergate from being about long-standing anger about corruption in the industry to some hate campaign against women in gaming. We have to remember that hatred is typically met with hatred and misunderstanding from misrepresentation. It seems that video gaming is now split between the Sargons and the Anitas of the world, and I can only hope that, as in general politics, at some point in the future an egalitarian leftist strain in video game discourse will develop that can diffuse the manufactured gender tensions and redirect the blame for the general reduction in quality and creativity in the gaming industry towards the corporations and empty suit executives who are truly responsible.
Stay away from me! Don't come any closer!
Indeed, Dead Rising gives you the option to forgive and rescue Paul alone among the psychopaths. In the same way, I hope that we can treat listless young men and gamers with understanding and education and not hatred that will only drive them further to the right. Similarly, in the vein of more nuanced perspectives, at around this time another group of suspicious gunslingers appear at the hunting shack, but this time willing to talk things out and look at the evidence, asking for a photo of the security room's vent before they believe Frank and agree to be escorted there.
Thanks.
Isabella! I don't know if you're listening to this or not, but I've made up my mind. This is the last resort. I'm going to end it all. I'm sorry that I got you involved in all of this. I love you, Isabella.
Exactly what is this last resort talk all about?
Carlito said that he'd blow up the mall if he were cornered.
Damn! We've got a regular suicide bomber on our hands.
Worse than what you're thinking. The explosion would send parasitic larvae into the atmosphere.
He plans to spread zombies outside of the city? Is he insane?
If that bomb goes off, there'll be nowhere to run. The zombies will be everywhere.
He's planning to flood the area underneath the mall with flammable gas, then set it off. If you could take care of the bombs while the gas concentration is still low.
There's a chance we could stop the explosion. Let's do it.
Here again, we see the game's ideas of Carlito as a suicide bomber and a terrorist. After we've learned the truth about the outbreak, his actions have some context, if not justification. This is perhaps another, much more serious example of how capitalism drives hatred between groups of people in a cycle of misery. The profit drives of American capitalism demand the destruction of Santa Cabeza, and in his rage, Carlito responds by destroying an American town. When the understandable US response leads to Carlito losing his remaining family, he loses all hope and escalates things to the destruction of the United States as a whole. The tragedy here is that ultimately the people of Santa Cabeza are the victims of American imperialism for the benefit of the elites, but the violence done to their community leads the survivors to a reactionary struggle against the people of the United States as a whole. Of course, I would argue this is a parallel to the wider struggle historically between the West and the Middle East, especially considering when the game came out. In response to the British and French injustices of colonialism and the Sykes-Picot Agreement, Arab pan-nationalism developed, including leftist tendencies like Baathism. These were broadly a rejection of Western influence and the desire to build up a stable and prosperous Middle Eastern region. But as some oil-rich nations looked towards the Soviet Union, the capitalist world, and in particular America and Israel, destabilized the region, fractured Arab unity, and assassinated legitimate leaders in favor of religious extremists. In this way, the constructive and reasonable reaction to the brutalities of the West was destroyed, and in its place the dogmatic and self-destructive ideology of Islamism was fostered. Islamists now strike blindly against the West, only managing to kill the innocent, and in response, America kills innocents and destroys the remaining secular leaders of the Middle East. Since neither side is driven by an honest attempt to solve the problems, with the Islamists only wanting glorious martyrdom and the impossible dream of a caliphate stretching from Spain to India, and America's leaders wanting to profit from the continued destruction through oil rights, weapons sales and reconstruction contracts, the conflict can never be solved and the violence will continue as long as it is profitable. Mainstream society is quick to criticise Islamic extremists, but it's less open to understanding the violence dealt out by the West's leaders, so there can never be an honest negotiation or reconciliation between the two sides.
We got rid of your bombs. This is as far as you go today. Just give up and surrender. Terrorist days are over, Carlito. You're finished. Well, shit.
Frank, sounds like you took care of the bombs. How's Brad?
The bomb's over and done with. Brad went after Carlito.
Copy. Report back here, Frank.
Yeah.
With the threat over, this next cutscene is strictly optional, and if it doesn't occur to you to go check on Brad before you start the next case, you'll never see it.
Brad? Brad?
Frank! Don't get any closer. Stay away, Frank. Don't get near me.
What's the matter, Brad? Are you hurt? I'm coming over there, Brad. We'll go back together. If you're hurt, we'll patch you up.
I'm screwed. It doesn't hurt. Not even a little. I'm already dead. Frank. Don't tell Jesse about this.
You know, for a Fed, he actually seemed like a good guy, and I honestly felt a little sad even replaying this bit. Rest in peace, Brad. But even in an emotional scene like this, we see the game's encouragement of voyeurism, with an achievement awarded for snapping a photo of the zombified Brad. The scoop comes first, after all. Seeing my inventory in this clip does remind me of something. Leveling up Frank will improve many attributes like damage and health, but the only way to improve weapon durability or to do things like skateboard kickflips is through books you can find around the mall. However, reading them just tells you what the book actually does. To get the benefit, you have to actually be carrying it around with you, using up one of your inventory slots. Huh? Apparently Frank is one of those people who believes it's more important to show off how many books you own than to actually read them.
As soon as Brad gets his hands on that terrorist, I guess it'll be case closed, huh?
No. You know of anything else he could be planning?
No. Nothing but the bombs. He's got his computer hidden away. I'm sure there's plenty of information on it.
Can you take me there? To his hideout?
Leave it to me.
Wow, Frank. All you had to say to Jesse was, I know Brad told you not to say anything, but ice cold, man. Once again, we're escorting Isabella, and even though we don't have to carry her this time, and the zombies are relatively light, trying to keep her abysmal AI moving towards the goal without getting stuck presents its own set of problems. Either way, she makes it there eventually.
Here it is. Let's go. It's no good. It's password protected. I'll try words we both might know. Family stuff. Things like that.
What's this cable?
It looks like part of a jamming device. I won't be able to disable it unless I log in.
Or I feel like you could just pull the wires out. I mean, I'm no expert, but that usually works. Whatever.
Frank, can you hear me? I found something interesting on a security feed from inside a store. Could you come back here? I need you to check it out.
Alright, I'm headed back now.
There's a lot of going from Carlito's hideout to the security room and back again at this part of the game, but it breaks the cutscenes up and it gives me a chance to restock my weapons and try out all the outfits. This one will be appropriate soon, trust me.
Take a look at this. The guy being dragged? I think it's Carlito.
You could be right. Where is this?
The basement of the North Plaza. Right in front of the butcher's shop.
You could be right. You can see his face. That security camera is clearly in 1080p. You know, it's funny, until now you probably wouldn't even know there was a butcher shop in the game since we've had no reason to go there until now, but it certainly fits some of the themes we've seen so far.
A customer.
That guy over there. I mean, that meat?
Oh, this is good meat, huh? I just got it in here. It's fresh. You just wait right there, sir. In a moment, you can try the best ground meat you've ever tasted.
Whoa, ground? Wait a minute, listen. I had something else in mind.
Zombies are no good. I can't serve my customers spoiled meat like that. I have a reputation to uphold. Trust me, I'm a butcher. I've got the best meat in town.
Speaking of previous themes, Larry is pretty much the epitomization of the fat, ignorant, meat-eating American that Dr. Barnaby was talking about earlier. He sort of reminds me of Mr. Potsdam from Harvester now that I think about it. The guy even screams meat when he charges at you. As the largest character in the game by far, he's sort of a parallel to the general critique of consumerist overconsumption applied directly to food. I'm not quite sure how gorging on steak can make an Asian man look 8 feet tall, but maybe it's all the bovine growth hormone. Much like Steven's customers and Adam's laughter, he's clearly been driven mad by the zombies taking away something he loves a whole lot. He strikes a strangely jovial figure, however, and even if he's crazy, unlike any other psychopath in the game, Larry won't attack first, and will just mill around the shop until you strike the first blow, meaning Frank can't really argue self-defense on this one. However, killing Larry is the only way to stop him from grinding up Carlito, the mass murderer. Well, I guess it's best not to think about the morality too much. In all seriousness though, the game itself will analyse Larry for me in the next cutscene, so I won't labour the point. One thing that does seem strange is that there are free cartons of milk in the butcher shop to recover your health if you need them, but no actual meat pickups that Frank can consume, even though raw meat does exist elsewhere in the game. Perhaps that's a mercy to the player so as not to feel too much like Larry, who just scoops a handful of waste pink slime from the tubs around the store to recover health. That's not enough to save him though.
You're finished. It's over.
What about Isabella?
She's on our side now. She's checking out your computer right now.
My purpose in life has been to get revenge for what you people did to Santa Cabeza, to my hometown. Why? Why was your meat so much more important to you than human life? Why? Why did my people have to die to feed your fat bellies?
That doesn't excuse what you've done. But I promise, the Santa Cabeza story will be told. But I need the password. Hey! Hey! Stay with me! Give me the computer's password!
Hey. Aren't zombies great? I mean, all they do is eat, and eat, and eat, growing in number. Just like you good, red, white, and blue Americans. It's not over. Not yet.
Speak! Speak, damn it! What do you mean it's not over?
I'm sorry, Isabella. Give this to my sister.
Hey. Shit!
Now, this cutscene is very, very on the nose, but I absolutely love the fact that a message like this is expressed in a mass market video game, and it's one of the things that made me want to talk about Dead Rising in the first place. Saying that though, it doesn't really need much analysis since I think everyone can probably get the point here. It does make me shake my head that some people still dismiss the series, or video games in general, as being devoid of political meaning. I've gotten a decent amount of messages personally from people who can't understand why I would try to analyse the medium. Perhaps I can understand this sentiment from the 61-year-old Judge Richard Seaborg, but so many gamers themselves seem to have such low expectations of our shared hobby. I believe that we can and should demand more than just black and white fantasy stories and brainless set pieces. How many bad guys have we seen over the years that are driven by nothing more than some innate impulse to commit evil? While such people do exist, they're hardly the root cause of most human suffering. Carlito, like most real-life villains, is driven by his own form of morality, and I wish we could see more characters like him.
He's dead.
Oh.
All he worried about was you in the end. But damn it! He died without telling me a damn thing. You know, I thought he was terrorist scum. But... in the end, all he really cared about was his sister. Here. He wanted you to have this.
Mama.
Did you figure it out?
Pachamama. Mother Earth. Our parents said that a lot. The place we lived, Santa Cabeza, was blessed with nature. Please believe me when I say my brother didn't want all this. He only wanted to live in peace in Santa Cabeza.
I might be alone in finding this story moving, but I hope that I'm not, and just to reiterate my last point, I don't see why we have to choose between entertaining gameplay and a compelling story, as the writers of walking simulators like Dear Esther would have us believe. In my mind, Dead Rising is just one of many games that have both.
Frank, the emergency line's been freed up. I'll give headquarters a call. Hang on.
Headquarters.
This is Agent Jessica McCartney. We have an emergency situation.
With no more mission markers, it's a bit confusing what you should be doing in the next 13 hours, but I'll be following the steps to get the true ending. That is, I mean the true ending, but in the Xbox 360 achievements, that's how Capcom spelled it. Ture. Sort of a shame they fixed that for the PC version, actually. Anyway, since Jessie has some good news, we should go see her, but before we even get out of North Plaza...
Frank, it's over. HQ's decided to ignore us.
What? What do you mean, ignore us?
I contacted headquarters, but the government has decided to deny all knowledge of what happened here. Special forces will arrive for cleanup at midnight. They'll take everyone out. Zombies, people, everyone.
Remember when I said Brad seemed much too benevolent about wanting to uncover the truth behind the outbreak instead of suppress it? This is much more like it. Something that I think is interesting here is that unlike in most fiction, this isn't getting blamed on a rogue general or some conspiracy inside the CIA or Red Skull, but just the actual US government themselves. I'll get back to this shortly, but for now it's even more important to go over to check on Jessie. I'm guessing she's realised by now that Brad isn't coming back for her either, and she definitely doesn't look too happy about being abandoned. Only 30 minutes later though, we're not able to get back before another cutscene.
Jessica McCartney? Talk about your close calls. You contacted us just in time. Your boss thought we should have a talk with you before the operation begins. We'll be taking you into custody. If you sign an agreement to keep your mouth shut about all this, you'll be free to go.
Well, I guess Dr. Barnaby did bite her after all. Rest in peace, Jessie, even if you didn't really do anything in the game.
Jessie?
I can believe that she could overpower one Special Forces goon by surprise, but I'm not sure what the other guy's excuse was. I mean, he did know how to fire his rifle, right? I suppose a note is the perfect way for Otis to say goodbye, considering he can't talk, but I can't help but think it's a bit of a Deus Ex Machina for him to be a helicopter pilot too. That said, it would be a bit of a kick in the teeth if all the optional survivors you took the effort to rescue got executed by a death squad, so it's nice to know that they get away whether you do the cheer ending or not. Speaking of endings, it's time to lay Jessie to rest, but before we do, it's time to get the Snuff Shot J achievement by taking a photo.
Perfect.
For fuck's sake, Capcom, what's the matter with you? Yeah, she's got booze, but she's also dead, and she has some guy's larynx in her stomach. Jesus Christ, Japan, you need an intervention.
Good.
Yeah, horror, that's more like it. Now I'm pissed, and I'm more than ready to take the fight to the cleanup crew. And on that note, it's midnight. These guys might have similar AI to the true iCult members, but they're sure as hell a lot more dangerous. Crossing the mall is a lot more difficult, but it's great to get some variety now that we're drawing into the final stages of the game, and the Special Forces also dropped the game's best firearm, which makes short work of the zombies, but is strangely ineffective against the exterminators themselves. The best way to take them down is charging in with a melee weapon, but beware getting stun-locked by multiple assault rifles. It's going to be a long night, and our supporting cast is quickly dwindling to nothing, so we'd better fight our way back to check on Isabella.
The military. They'll come, won't they? It's just like Santa Cabeza. The government wants to cover this up too.
Of course, Isabella is right that governments rarely, if ever, admit their mistakes, but I couldn't really find any evidence of any real-life large-scale military operations conducted solely to destroy evidence of the truth. Then again, that might signify nothing other than that they worked. In April, the United States accused Russia of orchestrating a bombing run on a hospital that was treating Syrian gas attack victims to cover up evidence, and the Russian government has certainly been responsible for highly questionable covert action in Ukraine and elsewhere, but it's equally possible that the US is simply spinning their own story. In the sophisticated propaganda of the modern age, covering up the truth is much more often done through manipulation of the media than by attempting to physically erase the evidence of events. The closest real-world parallel I can think of to the dramatic science fiction atrocity of a zombie outbreak is the nuclear weapons, and the bombing of Hiroshima had its own renegade Frank West-type reporter. Wilfred Burchett was described by fellow journalist John Pilger as a war correspondent of the old school. He relished his scoops and would endure almost anything to get them. But reporting was not enough for him. If he saw an act of injustice, he would personally try to remedy it. Burchett entered Japan attached to the US Navy, but while his compatriots loyally covered the surrender proceedings, this white Australian slipped out of the safety of the Allied occupation zone and set off alone for Hiroshima on a train packed with resentful Japanese officers, armed only with a Japanese phrasebook and a .45 revolver. He'd covered wars after all. When he got there, he was shocked not only by the scale of the devastation, but also by the atomic plague, a mysterious illness which had killed thousands, including those who had not even been in this city when the bomb had dropped. The doctors at Hiroshima's only surviving hospital could do little more than ease the horrific suffering of the dying, even as they themselves succumbed to the disease, and they begged Burchett to make the Americans send the antidote since Japan had surrendered. They could not know, of course, that there wasn't one. His report was smuggled out of the country by Morse code and published in the Daily Express, but by the time he returned to Yokohama, the American administration was denying his story, claiming that the doctors were simply incompetent and that he'd fallen victim to Japanese propaganda. Another reporter who had loyally sent his story of 25,000 words on Nagasaki back to the US through General MacArthur's office found later that it had been destroyed, and the American administration quickly enforced censorship. But the damage had already been done, and by November they were forced to admit the truth about radiation sickness, which shattered America's vision of nuclear weapons as a triumph of technology that would end brutality. In Hiroshima, a courageous lone reporter could go outside the system and report the facts, but in the modern age, can we expect the same? In the modern world, legal media censorship is largely non-existent, but the press is less trusted than ever. Instead of trying to erase all negative reporting, the government simply exercises their informal relationships with the small handful of corporations that control 95% of media output and are able to control what stories enter the mainstream narrative and how. The supposed proliferation of free information over the internet has simply become an echo chamber where big businesses can control what stories are seen by millions and which are forgotten at the bottom of an obscure search algorithm. I know this has become a rant again, but Dead Rising is partly about journalism, and I just thought the idea of government stormtroopers coming to eliminate the evidence of the outbreak was so quaint, even if it is a great story device and a typical zombie movie cliché. Wilfred Burchett was able to evade censorship, but a story that is simply pushed to the bottom of the news agenda does not have the same power. To paraphrase Noam Chomsky, it's only the most basic propaganda that works through force. It's only in a society where the people believe that they are free that they can be most effectively controlled. To get back to gameplay, what to do in the next 8 or so hours is up to the player. Even though Frank recommends staying in Carlito's hideout until the special forces are done, where's the fun in that? You might as well mess with them while you can and get some EXP at the same time, plus unlock the achievements that require you to kill 10 of them, which I think we've got by now, to empty a machine gun with 100% accuracy, which is easier than it sounds, since the bovine carcasses in the butcher shop count as targets for some reason, or to fight the helicopter which replaces the convict's jeep in the park. There's a lot of danger, so if you're not prepared, you're fairly likely to get yourself taken out, but again the Spec Ops emulate the true eye cultists. You're taken to a Black Hawk and stripped down once again, but escaping doesn't prove too difficult. Then again, if you get caught, it'll strip a few hours from the timer, which is useful if you just want to hurry things along. Either way though, make sure you leave enough time to get back to Carlito's hideout before 10 AM. After a night's hard work, the killing is finally done. What, did they forget a voice actor for that guy? He must be related to Otis. No idea who that is, but I guess it doesn't really matter now. It seems harsh to leave Isabella behind, but for whatever reason she doesn't want to come, and you can't make her, so all that's left to do is to head on up to the helipad. By the way, you have to talk to Isabella after 10 AM to get the cheer ending, something which the game never tells you. So if you save the game right next to the helipad and just before the chopper arrives without talking to her like I did the first time I played as a kid, you'll have to replay the whole game to get the cheer ending. Remind me why I like this game so much again. As you can see, the mall is eerily quiet and has become a charnel house, with the upbeat music providing a nice juxtaposition. A lot of people have said that abandoned malls are creepy places, and it's certainly strange to see this temple of consumerism still operating without its usual flock of followers. You have 2 hours, which is just enough time to take a last wander through and pick out what outfit you want to end the game in, and now all that's left to do is wait.
I'll be damned. He's still alive. That son of a bitch made it. That must mean he got his scoop. I can't wait to get my share of the take. Woo! Yeah! All right, you just hang tight, buddy. I'm on my way. Huh?
Hey! 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 I'm over here!
I see you, buddy! I see you! Yeah! I'm on my way! Yeah! Yeah, you did it! You did it! Yeah! Yeah!
Well, that was a surprisingly bleak ending, even for a zombie game. I'm not sure I appreciate that kind of cliffhanger, and doesn't it make the whole game up till now kind of pointless? If you don't complete all of the story, you'll get a regular ending graded on the number of survivors you rescued, where the helicopter lands and Frank gets away just fine, so why is the cheer ending so dark? Okay, of course that's not really the end of the game, but it is the end of 72-hour mode. Ending A earns you access to overtime mode, where the cheer ending of the game can be found. There isn't too much to analyse in the next few cutscenes, but if you've come this far, I assume you're interested in the story, so I'll leave them in.
You're awake. Oh, thank God. It wasn't easy getting you back here by myself, you know. You collapsed on the roof.
I collapsed? No, Wait. Does that mean...
You must have gotten yourself infected somehow. The time between infection and zombification differs greatly from person to person. You're lucky, Frank. You seem to have a very high level of resistance.
So, So what you're saying is that I get to spend longer waiting for the inevitable, is that it? You know, I'm not sure lucky is the word I'd use.
He who fights monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And that's probably the only time you'll hear me quote Nietzsche in my videos.
The helicopter crashed. No one's coming to help us now. It's over for us. No matter what we do.
What if there was some way to impede the infection? If we could extract and administer a large dose of hormones from the corpus allatum of an adult queen, it would potentially hinder the growth of the larva in your blood, retarding the zombification process.
Hang on a sec. I don't understand a word you just said. What are we supposed to do?
I'll need certain supplies to get this to work. And queens. As many as you can get your hands on.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Should be sitting around here waiting to die.
Overtime mode will take us through to the cheer ending, and Frank's imminent zombification is our new deadline, so you only have 24 hours to collect what Isabella needs. In case you thought that would be easy, the special forces have returned to occupy the mall. Interesting of the game to predict our current dystopian future where we have to hide in the shadows to avoid the eyes of military kill drones. Their guns aren't up to much, but if you get spotted, all the nearby speckles will make a beeline for you, and without any zombies to distract them, they're even more irritating than usual. The stealth mechanic is pretty half-baked, so it's usually better to just shoot the drones and run for it if there are too many jarheads to handle. The next few hours are just a trek through the mall to collect various items for Isabella while surviving the military, and by now you should have no trouble making your way around to find everything. Since I'm running out of outfits to wear, this seems like the perfect time to mention something I've forgotten till now, the game's cross-dressing options. Yes, as if Frank isn't being punished enough, there are 7 dresses and skirts in the game, which is actually more than there are suits, and our hero looks terrible in all of them. Then again, Dead Rising is all about freedom, so it's up to you if you want to play as a raging drag queen and massacre the army with your handbag. Sadly, there aren't any women's shoes, so I guess Capcom decided that fighting zombies while wearing high heels would just be too silly for this game. I hesitate to call this an early example of transgender issues in games, since these are clearly here just for the joke, just like the children's clothes. But hey, Frank doesn't seem to mind wearing them that much, so what do I know? I think if it were me, I would at least shave my legs though. It shouldn't take long to get everything together, and it's soon time to return to the hideout.
So, this drug that stops the parasite growth, have you ever made it before, or is it just a theory?
When I was working in the medical lab, my brother asked me to research a method of suppressing the parasite. Of course, back then, we didn't extract the hormones directly. We synthesized them in the lab.
So, he was looking to protect himself from his own terrorist scheme. He wanted a way out, is that it?
I don't know. I know he didn't bring the drug with him here. I have no idea what he intended to use it for. You think I'm just making excuses, but Carlito kept things from me.
Even if this, even if you do manage to make this drug, it won't completely cure me, will it?
I'm afraid not. When the effect wears off, the parasite will develop as it normally would, continuing the zombification process.
Fat lot of good that does me. Well, it's the only hope I've got now.
This is all I need as far as supplies are concerned. Now all we need are some queens.
Yeah, listen. Just how long do you suppose your drug will prevent me from turning into a walking corpse?
During my research, I was never able to conduct proper clinical studies. To a certain extent, the period of effectiveness depends on each patient's physiology. It could be a year, maybe only a week. There's no way to tell for sure.
Fantastic. So, I'll be a walking zombie time bomb.
A time bomb?
What?
Once the drug's development was complete, Carlito poured his energy into starting an NPO dedicated to helping war orphans. We had 50 doses of the drug prepared. Not long after that, the NPO managed to find homes for a large group of children. Want to guess just how many?
Oh my God. Are you saying he infected these kids and then gave them your drug? That he made 50 little ticking time bombs?
I don't know. I just don't know. It is possible, though.
Look at this. New York, DC, LA. These kids are spread all over the country. If your theory is right, the entire country could be crawling with zombies by now. I don't know what's worse. That we don't know for sure, that we can't warn anyone about this.
Well, what we need to do right now is prepare the hormone and get you taken care of.
Frank's ongoing infection means that he's doomed to take Isabella's drug regularly for the rest of his life, thereby making it the perfect consumer product. Indeed, this idea is developed more in Dead Rising 2, where the formula becomes the corporate-owned Zombrex, and that game, as well as the Road to Fortune spin-off comic, explore how far that Phenotrans will go to continue profiting from the drug. Of course, this draws inspiration from the idea that a treatment is more profitable than a cure, as seen with the widespread distrust of and paranoia about Big Pharma. Some of these complaints are no doubt valid, but it's difficult to know at what point anti-capitalism bleeds into reactionary hippie nature worship Ludditism. After all, SSRIs were a huge cash cow for pharmaceutical companies, but that doesn't mean they haven't been demonstrated to have an effect on depression. A more in-depth look at this concept is also featured in the puzzle/simulation game Big Pharma, which we'll cover at some point. To shift topics, it does seem quite ironic that the US is simultaneously the country that destroyed Santa Cabeza and the one that took in Carlito's orphans, but it's perhaps emblematic of the real-world confusion of US foreign policy. Liberals raise hell about the treatment of Muslim refugees, but ignore the American atrocities that caused their homes to be destabilized in the first place.
Leads out of here, I doubt these zombies would just let us walk right through.
Of course, the idea of brown-skinned refugee children as little ticking time bombs is also fitting given the current alt-right hysteria about the destruction of Western values, secularism, the white race, and so on through demographic change, but I don't think that implication is in the original game, especially since the list we saw is mostly made up of white-sounding names. However, the orphans are retconned in Dead Rising 3 to have all been from Santa Cabeza to tie in an extra political message about immigration and Hispanics in the US, and I think that's the more interesting plot anyway, so I'll just pretend that's canon here. Since we already talked about Carlito's motivations though, I'll move on. The hole in the clock tower allows the zombies to slowly repopulate the mall, and I suppose that's a good thing too, because otherwise we wouldn't have anywhere to get the queens that Isabella needs from. As the zombies spread out again, it takes a few game hours to hunt down the stretching zombies which carry the wasps, and recover the 10 needed for the formula.
You're gonna inject me with that, huh? Okay, Doc. Let's get this over with. At least I won't have to worry about turning into one of them for a while. Okay, next on the agenda. Figure out a way to get the hell out of here.
While I was isolating the hormone, I managed to identify a pheromone that suppresses the attack instinct in adult parasites. In other words, the zombies don't like the way it smells. If you give me a little more time, I should be able to produce some of this pheromone.
They think it smells bad? You think we could use something like that to keep them away from us? We could just walk right past them and get out of here.
In theory, yes. Either way, it's certainly better than nothing.
There was a cave. Outside, where the helicopter crashed. It was packed with zombies, I mean shoulder to shoulder. May lead somewhere outside. If it works, your anti-zombie perfume, it could keep us safe in that cave. What do you say? You ready to get the hell out of here?
There won't be enough of this pheromone to waste it on experiments. We'll only have enough to use it once.
Whatever you say.
My God. There are so many. Where on earth could this lead?
I don't know. But considering how many of them keep pouring out of here, it must be connected to something. Isabella, look. Any other way out of here is guarded by the military. If we're gonna get out of here and put a stop to Carlito's plan, we've got to go in there. It's the only way. It's not like we're unarmed. We got your smelly perfume, don't we? I wouldn't be alive right now if your shot hadn't worked. The perfume's gonna work too. I know it.
All right. Let's go.
Yeah.
And so, with that stirring pep talk, we're off, and there's no more free roaming as we reach the final stretch of the game. Make sure you grab some decent weapons and have full health before you give the last queen to Isabella, because there's no items down here but rocks. Unfortunately, the Horde isn't really our biggest enemy here, but the seriously wonky holding hands mechanic, which means you constantly get detached from Isabella and more importantly from the zombie repellent. Holding hands has been incredibly awkward for any of the survivors we've had to do it with until now, and it's no different here. If anything, it's worse with the uneven ground. Nonetheless, this is a neat little section and definitely makes you feel like you're entering the belly of the beast.
Are you sure this was a good idea?
Guards here, too. If we can get that gate open, they'll be too busy dealing with zombies to notice us slip by.
Wait! The pheromone is starting to wear off. It's only strong enough to cover one of us. What are you...
All right, hang on tight, okay? Once we're out, let's see if we can't steal ourselves that set of wheels.
Thank God the pheromone is starting to wear off, because carrying Isabella works a lot better than trying to drag her along. It's just a short run up to the lever, and while setting the zombies on the army and letting them out of the quarantine zone seems a bit cold-blooded, there's not much choice other than to do it and make a run for the Humvee and safety. But of course, nothing's ever quite that easy. Or to put it another way, this battle is seriously easy, and I'll do it here without losing any health, but it's just a really lame turret segment against one slow moving target that takes ages. I'll play it sped up for the sake of your sanity. The bam 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 of the machine gun really drives you crazy after a while. I appreciate the developers trying to add some variety, but as always when a game switches genres for just one short section, you can't really devote enough development time to make it fully formed. Also, I just realised this is the only part in the whole game in any mode where you don't play as Frank, since Isabella is the one on the turret. I don't know, I thought it was interesting.
These automated machines are no use at all on the battlefield. Switch to manual control.
Oh, it's this guy again. That "on the battlefield" quote reminds me so much of Metal Gear Solid for some reason.
Aim main cannon. Well, what have we here? Where were you hiding when my men mopped up the mall? On a mission in which the number of targets is unclear, it's difficult to ensure absolute thoroughness. Huh. You have imagination. That's what drives you in your quest to run. Your quest to hide. As prey, you and your kind are much more stubborn than the zombies.
How much do you know about the zombies?
I commanded the Santa Cabeza cleanup operation. If we had fulfilled our mission then, we wouldn't be needed here now to take care of this incident.
That's all it was to you, huh? A mission. What about those innocent people who had to pay for sins committed by our government
Our
and its
mistakes
inhuman
have
research?
not begun with this operation. Humanity has proven itself to be quite adept at making mistakes. Ha! Hell, it's the only thing we truly excel at. Well then, I'd say this mission isn't quite over yet. Don't you agree?
Brock is here to serve as our final boss, and while it might seem a bit cheap to use someone we've never met before, the revelation of his backstory means he serves to complete the symbolism of our cast of metaphors. Just as Carlito represents terrorism and Dr. Barnaby represents the cruelty of the drives of capitalist overconsumption, Brock is here to put a human face onto the inhuman forces of neoconservative American imperialism. While you can interpret his personality as one of those cliché evil bad guys I talked about earlier, whose only motivation is some half-thought critique of humanity as a whole and a celebration of naked power, I think he makes an interesting study of the philosophy of American military force. Brock doesn't really see his actions in terms of right and wrong, he only does what he's told and enjoys the work. He's a tool of the US war machine, but a willing one who finds his purpose there. In a way, he's the counterpoint to the Vietnam veteran Cliff, and rather being haunted by war, is comforted by it. He is the hammer in search of a nail, much like the neocon warhawks in the top levels of the American political and military hierarchy. His pessimistic view of humanity informs his belief that solutions are always measured in terms of bullets and bombs. Brock's heavy-handed and indiscriminate approach in Santa Cabeza is the cause of the Willamette incident, but instead of accepting the blame, he believes that only more violence could have achieved a favourable result, much like the right-wing ideologues who believe that we could have won in Vietnam or Iraq if only the cowardly politicians hadn't cut and run and betrayed our military by pulling out. Even though the application of brutality alone can never win hearts and minds, those like Brock believe that they are simply acting rationally in accordance with realpolitik, to pursue power and achieve America's goals at any cost, without worries about ethics or past mistakes that can only cost wars. However, their so-called pragmatism is itself an ideology that they are left blind by. In taking this nihilistic and reductive approach towards so-called human nature, they're setting up a self-fulfilling prophecy and in fact defining mankind as an ignorant and brutish species. In the fanatical pursuit of the interests of the American elite, the stated goal of defending America is forfeit. Brock got what he wanted from the Santa Cabeza incident and from the Willamette operation, so he isn't concerned with the fact that his actions make America less safe and not more safe. It's difficult to know to what extent the naked psychopathy of Brock informs the real logic of neoconservatism, and how much American politicians and military leaders may actually believe they're doing the right thing, but the end result is largely indistinguishable. I'm reminded of an interview between Donald Trump and Bill O'Reilly where we get a rare glimpse of the truth behind Warhawk ideology rather than the patriotic veneer. Trump: I do respect Putin. Will I get along with him? I have no idea. It's very possible I won't. O'Reilly interjects: he's a killer though. Putin's a killer. There are a lot of killers, Trump replies. We've got a lot of killers. What, do you think our country's so innocent? Fitting with the Spartan ideology of his speech, the battle with Brock is conducted as ritualistic man-on-man unarmed combat. Honestly, I think it doesn't really fit with the tempo of the rest of the game, and it consists mostly of running around him while trying to get an opening to launch one of your special moves. The double lariat in particular, the move where Frank spins around, ends the battle quickly and without much effort, but I try to avoid that. I think a more varied battle would have been nicer, but it gets the point across about Brock. Bloodthirsty to the end, he's still smiling as the Horde devours him. Frank West managed to escape the town of Willamette with information pertinent to the incident under his belt. The news caused a fervour throughout the world, leading the US government to admit at least partial culpability in the livestock research program. However, no connection to the Willamette incident was acknowledged, and events that occurred there were deemed the work of a fringe terrorist group. The people of the world, as could be expected from the modern culture of news saturation, soon let the Willamette incident fade from their minds. The authenticity of Carlito's chilling plan to utilize the orphans as his pawns has yet to be confirmed or proven false. And yet he complained that his belly was not full. I find the idea that the news cycle and popular consciousness would just move on from a zombie attack to be pretty hilarious. But in a satire it works, and really, it's true to say that even if the Willamette incident did happen, it wouldn't stop the next Star Wars movie from coming out, Americans from eating burgers, or people tweeting about the latest dumb thing that Trump said. The tier ending is the only one in which Frank escapes with the full story of the outbreak, but in the end, it hardly even mattered. There are few consequences for those responsible besides the ones Frank, Brad, and Carlito inflicted in Willamette, and the true implications of this report are ignored, with the government spin machine in full swing. As we see in Dead Rising 2 and beyond, zombie outbreaks continue across the US, and corporations and the government continue to exploit them for their own reasons. You could call it a downer ending, and in a way it is, but I find it to be much more witty than the cliche where everybody but the monster dies at the end. While most games tell us that the heroism of one man can change the world, Dead Rising posits that maybe it can't, and it's the responsibility of the public at large to right the wrongs of society. Frank does everything right, does everything that only a tiny minority of journalists ever do by cutting through the mainstream narrative, and fails anyway due to the apathy and short-sightedness of the media and media consumers. Dead Rising was actually part of the reason I became interested in pursuing a degree in journalism, ridiculous as that sounds, but perhaps I should have paid more attention to this ending. As much as I enjoyed Drea's Justified on the soundtrack here, perhaps a better choice would have been Dirty Laundry by Don Henley. This gloriously cynical ending is a perfect wrap-up to the themes of the story as a whole, and the cherry on top of the full force assault on American values. We've covered consumerism, law and order, the news, terrorism, guns, sex, class, freedom, imperialism, greed, and meat-eating, among others. I won't waste time by repeating all the points I've made in the last 2.5 hours, but I hope people can understand why I wanted to cover this game now, and I'm curious what others made of it. If you had a different take on the material, I'd be interested to hear about it in the comments. One point that created a lot of forum posts in 2006 was the end of the text crawl. The text in red is an excerpt from the English nursery rhyme, which is certainly a cliche for a horror story, but let's look at it anyway. Robin the Bobbin, the big-bellied Ben, he ate more meat than 80 men. He ate a cow, he ate a calf, he ate a butcher and a half. He ate a church, he ate a steeple, he ate the priest and all the people. A cow and a calf, an ox and a half, a church and a steeple, and all the good people, and yet he complained that his belly was not yet full. This rhyme goes back to at least 1897, but it's easy to see how it can be applied to the modern zombie narrative. It could apply to Frank personally, of course, with the parasite strain still in his blood. It could be foreshadowing for how the US government and corporations will continue to use the zombies for their own profit. But most of all, of course, it brings to mind a crowd of all-consuming monsters that eat everything in their path without stopping for breath. And whether that applies to the living dead or Black Friday shoppers is up to you. As you can see in the background, the desire to render huge crowds of zombies for the first time in game was part of the reason for this game's creation, and while the developers are rightfully proud of this, I feel that Dead Rising became much more than the sum of its parts. I know some people were unhappy with me devoting so much time to one game though, which I understand, so for my next few videos I'll be covering some much more obscure and smaller scale leftist titles. But for now, thank you for the great ride, Capcom. And so we finally get to the real end of the game. We're done, right? Well, there are still a few things I wanted to say before getting to final scoring, so bear with me just a little while longer. I think this is probably the most obsessive video on Dead Rising that's ever been made, so I might as well cover everything. Like all games to a greater or lesser degree, Dead Rising can be replayed, and I personally feel it has good replay value. Some achievements require basically a dedicated playthrough, like Saint, which requires rescuing all 45 optional survivors, Transmissionary, which requires getting every possible walkie-talkie call, Cloves Horse, trying all the outfits, and Frank the Pimp, which requires escorting 8 female survivors at once and no men. And to free up the mission log, you need to go around killing all the male optional survivors to get it. Goddamn cultural Marxism strikes again. These are all a little finicky to complete, and I personally needed guides, but I enjoyed all of them. Slightly more boring is PP Collector, yes haha, silly name, which means you need to take photos of 100 little stickers located throughout the game. Kind of lame, but only takes about an hour really. One achievement that's even more of a slog, but also rewards you with the best weapon in the game, is Zombie Genocider, which requires you to kill the entire population of Willamette. In case you forgot, that's 53,594 zombies. Obviously, trying to do this by hand is a hopeless proposition, so the run consists entirely of driving around the underground tunnels, periodically switching between vehicles as they get damaged, for about 3 real-world hours. Honestly, it doesn't require much concentration, so you can watch a movie or something while you go, but it's still kind of funny when you think about how stupid a waste of time it is. I'm not sure whether it's subversive in a society where everyone is expected to be rushing around and making the best use of their time 24 hours a day, or if it's just another manifestation of our increasingly nihilistic and pointless existences under late capitalism. Despite my protestations of Marxist enlightenment, I guess I must be as hopelessly addicted to my little signs of status as everyone else in society because I did it in 2006 and 2017. My reward was the Blue Bombers Mega Buster, which I tried not to use too much on film since it would be boring to watch and it seems pretty cheap, but I'm going to take every advantage I can get in Infinity mode. Essentially, it's a survival game where every NPC is hostile. Take that, you mute bastard. But more importantly, Frank loses health over time from hunger and needs to find food to survive in the mall for as long as possible. It's a fun little idea, and of course there are no more unlimited food pickups like in single player, so you have to hunt down each hidden morsel and take out everyone you meet to get their food. And of course, each time you get hit by zombies or survivors is going to cost you. There are 2 awards for surviving 5 and 7 days in this mode, and one of them gets you the awesome laser sword, so an achievement hound like me is definitely going to go for it. I got some feedback saying that I went a little too easy on Paul in my analysis, but that sure isn't going to be a problem this time. Die, nerd! Oh, come on, I don't get the box if I make him drop a Molotov on himself. There's just one little problem with Infinite mode, and that's that you can't save. Well, I mean, it sounds obvious, right? It's supposed to be a survival mode, but think about it. 1 day of game time is 2 hours, which means that 7-Day Survivor requires you to play the game non-stop for 14 hours. You can't just leave the game running either, since you have to keep Frank's health up and you have to constantly be finding more food. To make matters worse, the fact that food is so limited also means that if you're seriously going for the achievements, you can't really experiment or have any fun while playing. You have to use the most overpowered weapons like the Mega Buster and Mini Chainsaw constantly or risk losing too much health. Ha! Eat that, Steve Blum. How's that for a justifiable homicide? And if you thought of hiding out in the supermarket, don't bother because it's locked down. The other obvious choice is the food court, but there's a little problem there too. In the original version of the game, entering or leaving the food court at all on the 5th day would lead to a crash, and remember that 5 days means 10 hours of real play. This leads me to believe that Capcom didn't even play their own Infinity mode much, since this would be an easy to detect glitch, and it was never patched. This bug quickly became well known, but imagine being one of the first people to find out about it. Thankfully, it's fixed for the PC version. As of right now, the 5 and 7 day survival achievements are the only ones I haven't unlocked, and I don't know if I ever will. However, some people have been asking me if I want to do live streaming, so perhaps at one point if there's interest we can go through the pain together while I try to fill 14 hours with entertainment somehow. After all, it can't be worse than playing the same GoldenEye level for 40 hours straight, and apparently some people do that. Of course, every game gets old after a while, and there's only so much content there can be. Thankfully, Capcom decided to extend the game's lifespan a bit by including 12 items of DLC. Unfortunately, they were all just recolored clothing items that Frank can get from the lockers in the security room. Of course, I can't knock Capcom too much since they were all free, but sadly it seems like Dead Rising was simply their first piece of experimentation, since Capcom is now well known for selling costume DLC for their fighting games for up to $4 per outfit. On the subject of bad business practices, I wanted to address one issue that existed with the original game. Many people complained that the on-screen text dialogue, like Otis's walkie-talkie calls, were just too small and blurry to read on their standard definition TVs, since HD TVs were just becoming semi-affordable for consumers and the game was optimised for them. Was this some sinister planned obsolescence ploy on Capcom's behalf? Now, I might have knocked Sargon earlier, but let it never be said that I'm not also a rational skeptic YouTuber, because we're going to test whether Capcom hated SD TVs experimentally. Okay, so there's an HD TV right next to you when you first start fighting zombies, and the SD TVs are laying in a warehouse in the corner, which certainly seems to indicate a preference, but we won't know for sure until we see how many zombies I can kill with each of them before it breaks. Okay, the HD TV is definitely taking an early lead, and it's cutting through that horde, but there's certainly something to be said for the extra weight of the cathode ray tube. That's definitely a satisfying impact. As for the real world, some gamers demanded a patch which never came, and there's no option to change the font size in the PC version either, though of course that's sort of a moot point nowadays. When there was similar complaints about the Lost Planet demo in 2007, however, Capcom did fix the problem before release. They weren't the only company to run afoul of this issue, and Ubisoft's 2005 Peter Jackson's King Kong on Xbox 360 was too dark to see in standard definition, since they had only tested it on an HD TV, and a patch was quickly rushed out. It's a good thing that studios would never make short-sighted mistakes and not test their games enough like that nowadays. Now, it's clear that the HD TV is killing quicker, which might be a reference to the blazing fast LED pixel illumination, or it might just be because the horde is much bigger and more aggressive in Entrance Plaza, who knows. The SD TV seems to be taking a more ponderous, slow and steady approach, which perhaps reflects its long history and enduring popularity among retro fans. Oh, but I think we have a verdict. The HD TV is in pieces at just 64 kills, with the SD TV still going strong. It lasted for 86 kills, enough that I got all the way to the end of Paradise Plaza and had to head back. I guess it's true what they say, they just don't make them like they used to. I think we can put that silly conspiracy to rest now. After 11 years of heated controversy, I can say scientifically that Capcom loves standard def after all. Some people have asked what I think about the sequels to Dead Rising, and as far as I'm concerned, there's only one rightful sequel, and that's Dead Rising 2. It expanded on the concepts of the first with better survivor AI, crafting, slightly better graphics, and online modes that were great fun. The story is a bit sillier in my opinion, but it still contains the political messages that I enjoyed so much, with more of a focus on reality TV and entertainment, plus evil corporations. Overall, it's definitely worth checking out, but I don't plan on making a video on it for a good long while. There are two other games which claim to be part of the series, but as far as I know, they're just examples of the general degeneration of the industry as a whole. I haven't played either of them, since I don't want to spoil my enjoyment of the series as a whole, but from what I understand, the third game is a somewhat dumber, more mass-market title with brown bloom graphics, with less creativity and effort, while still having some redeeming features. while the fourth game is a complete flop that demonstrates a total tonal shift and, most importantly, a lack of effort compared to the care and artistry that went into Dead Rising. It's pretty stunning to me that a game released in 2016 can really have worse graphics than one from 2006, but Dead Rising 4 really looks abysmal. If you want to see why, I encourage you to search up Crobecat's comparison video, because I don't want to put a bad taste in my mouth by thinking about it anymore. But in all seriousness, no sequel could dampen my enjoyment of Dead Rising, which I believe is one of the greatest games of the Xbox 360 era. I'm sure my opinion on it is obvious by now, but to keep things consistent, I'm going to rate it like the other games I've covered. In terms of gameplay and visuals, the clear technical skill involved in the production really shows in the final product. Unlike those who write Dead Rising off as a brainless gore fest, I think it's clear that a lot of effort was put in to make it a hard-hitting and satirical story piece, just like the zombie movies it's inspired by, and that really shows in the cutscenes. Long before LA Noire, Dead Rising used full motion capture to portray on screen the emotion and energy of the script, and that's reflected in cutscenes that are full of dramatic weight. At the same time, the 360's hardware was put to the test by the demands of the gameplay portions, which are a total joy to play, and the philosophy of freedom and player choice are fully realised. The hundreds of ways to dispatch the undead or other survivors of the Willamette Parkview Mall keep the game entertaining for dozens of hours, and the survivor rescues and psychopaths keep the game from being too easy. The game remains entertaining for multiple playthroughs, and even after up to 90 hours of play to produce this video and replaying some sections many times to capture what I wanted, I was rarely bored. With that said, there are some frustrations that I have to mention, like the awful survivor AI, bugs like the food court glitch, and the fact that the game sometimes leaves the player unsure what to do without a guide. In addition, the gorgeous wide open areas and density of zombies meant that the Xbox 360 version suffered from long load times, and the tiny text was annoying in the original release. Ultimately, I have to award the Xbox 360 version with a 9 out of 10, but with better load times, 60 frames per second, less bugs, and no issues with standard definition, the HD re-release deserves a perfect 10 out of 10 in my mind. If you don't feel that my analysis has spoiled it for you, and you enjoy the genre, I highly advise you to play Dead Rising and Dead Rising 2 on PC or Xbox One. Of course, we should also cover the subversiveness of Dead Rising's story and themes, and here too I think the game shines. I suppose I could dock a few points for the fact that its main message is essentially a retread of Dawn of the Dead, a movie that came out 39 years ago, but then again, those criticisms of consumerism apply just as well in 2017 as they did in 2006 and 1978, and that alone should make players think. In addition, the criticism is modernised by the War on Terror era script, and the meat analogy is further explored. As a video game, it does what Dawn of the Dead never could, and brings the player into the free roam consumerist playground personally. Of course, the game needs to be understood in context to bring these themes across, and many who played it never received the social messages. I feel like making the satire any more blatant would ruin it for the rest of us though, and I think the parody is largely pitch perfect. At the end of the day, Dead Rising is only capable of critiquing capitalist culture and not of offering an alternative, but it could never really do that without becoming preachy. Overall, I'll grant it an 8 out of 10 in terms of subversive content, and it represents a highly underrated piece of social commentary in my opinion. I hope that you've agreed it was an interesting piece to cover, and most of all, I hope you've enjoyed my analysis. Thank you for sticking with me through some of the rough points and the general length, and I hope to see you in my upcoming videos, as well as hearing your feedback in my comment section or on social media. The best reward I could ever receive is a wide audience, and I encourage you to share my videos if you think you know someone who might be interested. But this is capitalism after all, and money is pretty nice too, so I give thanks to my $5 Patreon sponsor Jacob Bagge for helping to support this video, and I always appreciate new patrons. If you're able to donate, the link is in the description. Thank you, and see you next time. Oh god, I can't believe I wrote 16,650 words about a zombie game. What am I doing with my life? That's basically a dissertation. Well, at least the audience reaction makes it all worthwhile.
Frank. Oh, Frank. How can you even show me crap like this? You know, I really don't think you're cut out for this. I can't stop laughing.